Good evening. Today is April the 2nd, 2025, and I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Oregon City Commission, and we'll start with the roll call.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Morrow?
Here.
Mayor McGriff?
Present. Would you please all stand if you are able and join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So would you be interested in reading any of these?
I'm happy to read it.
Okay, why don't you do the first one? You have that in front of you? I can give you the really fancy one.
Pull up the...
Here's the fancy one.
Oh, this is fancy. All right.
We're fancy. Commissioner Wilson's going to read the first proclamation.
All right, so our first proclamation is in regards to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So whereas April marks Sexual Assault Awareness Month, a time to bring attention to the widespread issue of sexual violence and empower communities to take action. This year's theme, Together We Act, United We Change, highlights the power of working together to create safer, more respectful environments for all. And whereas sexual abuse, assault, and harassment affects individuals of every background, to address this, we must promote education around consent, healthy communication, and bystander intervention. By equipping individuals and communities with these tools, we can help prevent violence before it starts and foster a culture of respect and care. And whereas central to this campaign, it is the importance of amplifying the voices of survivors, especially those most vulnerable in our communities. Their experiences must be heard and acknowledged, and their stories should guide our efforts to combat sexual violence in all forms. And whereas everyone in our communities deserves to live in a safe and supportive environments where they are treated with respect. When our workplaces, schools, and communities work together to uphold safety and respect, we make progress in preventing sexual abuse, assault, and harassment. And whereas 1 out of every 6 American women has been a victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime, and about 3% of American men, or 1 in 33, have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime, and 32.9% of adults with intellectual disabilities have experienced sexual violence. And whereas a majority of children victims are 12 to 17, of victims under the age of 18, 30% of victims of sexual assault and rape are under the age of 12, and 66% of victims of sexual assault and rape are aged 12 through 17. Well, I can't say now.
No. And now, therefore, I, Denise C. McGriff, hereby proclaim April 2025 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and together we act, united, we change. By standing in solidarity, we can build a future free from sexual violence and create a world where everyone is safe, valued, and respected. And I will sign this today on April 2nd, 2025. And ladies, I know you're here, and I would love for you to come up. Evan. Good evening. Nate, yeah, make sure the green light's on.
Are we good now?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening. I'm April Everest, Program Services Coordinator at ASA Place Family Justice Center and an employee of Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for having us these last few years, Mayor McGriff, and members of the Commission, and for proclaiming April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Every year in April, we acknowledge the tremendous efforts of advocates and service providers, witness the strength and perseverance of survivors, and engage our community through our collaborative work group, coordinating local awareness activities and events all month long. We know that 1 month alone isn't enough to solve this serious and widespread issue. However, the more we bring awareness and educate folks, the more allies we gather to support survivors and prevent sexual violence before it happens. Thank you for being a vital part of this movement. Together we can act. United we can change to build safe communities for all. Thank you.
Would you let us know about the programming activities that are going to occur later this month so it can be on our system?
Absolutely. In front of you all, I had Evan Lee over there, city recorder, pass out our month of upcoming events. Yesterday at the Oregon City Elevator, we worked with Oregon City Public Works to put teal lights around the elevator and then a ribbon light. In addition to the proclamation today, we also have a various amount of community engagement activities as well. There's various conferences, one out of Multnomah County, and then there's also the Oregon Child Abuse and Human Trafficking 2-Day Summit at the end of this month. Here locally, Clackamas Community College will also be doing a few events. One will be public, it's called Take Back the Night, and that'll be on the 24th of this month. And then also wanting to highlight the District Attorney's Office for Clackamas County. They're gonna be doing their Honoring Crime Victims event again, and that's gonna take place on the 10th, which is next week. And it's gonna be down at the Liberty Plaza, which is just to the right of the courthouse in downtown Oregon City.
And is there a specific time for that, just so we get that on the record?
Yes, it starts from 2 p.m. and goes till 5 p.m.
So we encourage our residents to come out, particularly for the event taking place on April the 10th from 2 to 5 p.m. down at Liberty Plaza, and the community college event, and I guess we'll find out later what time that is. And then you've got also the Denim Day on the 30th for at the college.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We just appreciate all the work that you do and support. And thank you to our Oregon City Police Department for their coordination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to proclamation number 3, am I changing the date for that to the 19th? Okay, can make that happen. Thought I better check. Okay, so the next one I'd like to read is Arab American Heritage Month. So whereas for over a century, Arab Americans have been making valuable contributions to virtually every aspect of American society in medicine, law, business, education, technology, government, military service, and culture. And whereas since migrating to America, men and women of Arab descent have shared their rich culture and traditions with neighbors and friends, while also setting fine examples of model citizens and public officials. Whereas they have brought with them to America their resilient family values, strong work ethic, dedication to education, and diversity in faith and creed that have added strength to our democracy. Whereas Arab Americans have also enriched our society by sharing the entrepreneurial spirit that makes our nation free and prosperous. And whereas we join all Americans in a desire to see a peaceful and diverse society where every individual is treated equally and feels safe. And whereas the incredible contributions and heritage of Arab Americans have helped build a better nation, therefore, I, Mayor Denise C. McGriff, do proclaim April 2025 as Arab American Heritage Month, and that the Commission encourages all citizens to learn and celebrate the important contributions of Arab Americans have made in Oregon City, Clackamas County, Oregon, and across America. And I will sign this on the 2nd day of April 2025. And would any of you like to read the proclamation for Arbor Month? You just have to change the date from April 21st to April 19th.
Change it to what?
April 19th. That's
Okay.
when we're going to have our tree planting.
Okay, I'll read it. Arbor Day Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal.
Now therefore, I, Denise C. McGriff, Mayor of the City of Oregon City, do proclaim April 19th, 2025 as Arbor Day in Oregon City and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day, support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and to plant and care for trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations. And I will sign this on the 2nd of April, 2025. And could we have staff just give us a little bit of the layout on what's going to happen on April the 19th at Hillendale Park? So who would like to do that? I don't have the details with me. So I was asking if we could give the details for the record on what we will be doing on April the 19th. So come on up. You know, we don't have mics back there. Sorry. You have to get up. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. I know this was not expected, but
No worries.
I don't have the paperwork in front of me.
For the record, Tom Kissinger, Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation. So April 19th, we'll be doing a tree planting at Hillendale. We'll do our typical kind of presentation that we do before that, and everybody's invited to attend. I don't believe we have a Friends of Trees event associated with it this
Not
year,
this
so it's
time.
just the tree planting.
Just the tree planting.
Yeah.
And the time?
I actually don't know the time.
Is it 9? That's when we usually
think
done
it's
it.
9.
9,
Yeah.
okay. Well, we'll get something out on Trail News. So April 19th, Hillendale Park, we're going to plant some trees. I don't know exactly which one it is going to be this year, but we will be planting some trees.
If I remember correctly, it's a maple this year.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. All right, so is there anyone here for item number 4 who would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda today? And I don't see anyone, so we'll move on to item number 5. So we have 2 presentations from 2 of our quasi-judicial boards that we love and adore. So we have the 2024 annual report of the Planning Commission activities. So let's hear about the Planning Commission activities.
Mayor McGriff, members of the commission, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present the annual report of the Planning Commission activities this evening. In 2024,
And don't forget to say your name for the record, of
yes,
course.
my name is Paul Espy, and I serve as the chair of Planning Commission. I have with me this evening Aquila Hurd-Ravich, and she is the Community Development Director, as you all know. But for the benefit of the record, we will do that. In 2024, the Planning Commission discussed a variety of different topics. We received lots of different informative presentations and acted on several applications. We did 5 legislative amendments, a parking adjustment for, I believe, CFEC, and then some master plan review amendments, and then kind of our crown jewel was the review of the amendments of the Park Place concept plan area. And then we also agreed on a work plan and set forth our priorities. We had some presentations during the year that included the legal training from our esteemed Assistant City Attorney, Carrie Richter. This training is always a really good reminder and foundational piece to kick off the new year for every planning commission. We go from A to Z through the land use law and how we conduct ourselves in meetings. Really great for people who are just beginning, and also for some of us who may have forgotten some of the things along the way. So that was extremely informative and useful. Jerry Herman and Bob LaSalle did a wonderful job on the land use planning legacies of the 1970s and the 1980s, which provided a tour de force history of the land use program in Oregon. Public Works staff presented an overview of the NPDES, or National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, and the MS4, or Municipal Separate Stormwater System Program, which is really their reason d'etre for their existence in terms of their compliance with state and federal requirements for stormwater and sewage discharge. The we also talked about the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project update, which was a really exciting presentation about some of the things that may happen down in that area to facilitate pedestrian and bicycle travel and sort of take back the walkways and pedestrian travel on there and allow for more riverine access. And then finally, the Public Works Director presented a review of the Transportation System Plan prioritization process, and this was really in response to questions that were asked about the collectors and the roadways that were identified in the Park Place concept plan, and I think that that sort of was also a lot of the discussion around, a secondary access and ingress and egress from that area. Some of the discussion topics included the work plan with items that they wanted to address in the calendar year 2024. And then we also are going to tackle the climate-friendly and equitable communities, which was first discussed in 2024. So some of the action items that we did, we recommended approval for a zoning code text amendment to allow city-managed recreational vehicle parks allowed as an accessory use in the institutional zone, and specifically for Clackamas Park. We recommended approval of an annexation and zone change on Maple Lane Road. Planning Commission participated in multiple Park Place concept plan code amendments reviews from May through the first public hearing in September, as previously mentioned. We recommended approval of a transportation system plan amendment to incorporate the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Plan. We recommended approval of a zoning code text amendment to update language in Chapter 1747, erosion and sediment control. Approved an adjustment to parking standards for the proposed middle housing triplexes to allow increased on-site parking, and approved a master plan for Sportcraft Landing Marina that recognized the uses that are currently occurring down there, as well as the structures that were non-conforming on the site. And then finally, we approved a code interpretation and non-conforming use review request from Lithia Subaru for their proposed expansion, which they, I believe, successfully completed.
They haven't started it yet.
I don't know if they've started it yet. Okay, right, okay. So for our work plan this year, over the course of several meetings in 2023 and 2024, we developed a work plan with topics that fell into three general categories. And these include climate-friendly and equitable communities, education and interdepartmental coordination items were completed with the presentations, and then future considerations for policy direction. So for the current projects that are underway, that includes the climate-friendly and equitable communities, where public engagement began in the fall of 2024 and concludes in February of 2025. Public hearings are anticipated in April and May of 2025, so we're still working on that. And code amendments are anticipated to go into effect in June of 2025. We will also discuss the Thimble Creek Industrial Site readiness, the planning, economic development, and public works coordinated work efforts, and we were awarded a grant to study the development barriers along Beaver Creek Road. The final product will include tools and actions that the city can take to incentivize the employment development in that location. As far as education and interdepartmental coordination, affordable housing and housing affordability were presented to the Planning Commission by representatives of the Housing Authority in Clackamas County and Northwest Housing Alternatives. The Parks Master Plan update from the Parks and Recreation Director and consultant was also presented, And the Public Works Director and Senior Planner gave an overview of growth assumptions in infrastructure master plans and how that growth was accounted for in the middle housing analysis. For the future, the Planning Commission agreed to prioritize 7th Street Molalla corridor and look at increasing and attracting more business activity, making that area more vital, commercial uses on the ground floor, view corridor protection, and we haven't really started on any of the specific work items because we have not had the resources or the capacity to, because of other projects that we've been working on. There may be capacity this summer in 2025. So I think that this is probably fertile area for a lot of expanded discussion on all sorts of things that could occur in that corridor area, including design standards, lighting standards, who knows, signage, all kinds of things could be discussed in the future on that, and I think that's something that we could all really get excited about discussing. There is also a fairly detailed matrix in there that I won't go over. I'm going to assume that you have done your reading this evening, and if there is anything that, about that work plan matrix that you have questions about, either Aquila or myself would be more than happy to answer it.
I am so glad you asked that question because I'm going to make some recommendations about direction.
Excellent.
Number one, the 7th Street. Molalla and 7th Street are not the same. They are a continuous corridor, but they are not the same. It would seem to me that you would be engaging with the Historic Review Board on the 7th Street corridor portion because most of it's within the boundaries of the McLaughlin Conservation District. And they should not be treated in the same manner because they serve different functions and they, in terms of appearance and execution, they operate quite differently. So that is something I would just strongly recommend happen.
Excellent. So that sounds like, that sounds like a great thing to explore on how to differentiate between the two.
But provide some
Between the
connection.
two worlds. Absolutely.
Because once you pass Eastham School, it's like, you're in the wild, wild west on the other part, and then you've got, and we did the 7th Street corridor plan. And
Right.
there may be things in that plan that could be updated, but again, I think the coordination between the Historic Review Board is critical.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I think that I would like to suggest that the City Commission have an initial discussion about item number 2 in short-term rentals. Let's just say that I have some very strong feelings about that, and I think we need to give direction before you guys start off on doing something with that. I don't want it to come the other direction, so I apologize on that.
No, I think that's great. We would love to hear some.
In light of our housing issues, I have some, like I said, I have some very strong feelings about that.
Right.
I think all the other things that I read are good. Obviously, the other thing I should say too is that on Friday I took the Ethics Commission training, and that's something we all have to be doing. So let me just tell you that it was very enlightening, and there's some new rules that some of us are not familiar with that we need to be updated on, but we were very lucky to have 2 members of the League of Oregon Cities legal staff there, and by the time we got done with that poor staff person, he had a notebook full of questions that were not answered by the training. So hopefully they're going to get the answers to that, and we will get some feedback on some of these. I mean, there's some nuances,
Sounds great. Yeah.
So that, I'm just telling you, that's the fun coming up for you. Staff, commissioners, you have anything that you want to add now that I've just sort of blew some of this out of the water?
Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, I was going to comment on the same 2 things. I think seeing what has happened in other communities like Hood River, for instance, where they basically hollowed out neighborhoods and they're vacant because they're all short-term rentals now, and people that work in Hood River can't afford to live in Hood River because there's nothing available. So yeah, I think we all have concerns about that, and I know the Planning Commission would as well. And I'll just throw in something to the mayor's comment about 7th Street and Molalla. They are a little different, and our MUC zoning is some of the least restrictive as far as permissible uses, or permitted uses, I guess I should say is the right term. So maybe those two areas need to be zoned differently. I mean, I hate to complicate things more with a
I couldn't agree
different
with you
kind of
more.
zoning, but that MUC zoning really is everything from soup to nuts, some of which would not be appropriate on 7th Street and some wouldn't be appropriate on Malala. So I think that ought to be a part of your discussion, and that's all I have to say.
Great.
Back in the day, I think you recall this, Paul, we also had a zone that we added a little bit of we have an overlay because of the historic district, but the Kaenema district where we had the historic commercial didn't quite work, but maybe there's a tweak between that and the MUC that we can tweak 7th Street, because again, I would say 7th Street is much more pedestrian oriented as opposed to Malala Avenue, where, we've done a lot of things to improve that. But when you get into some of that middle section, it's a little bit of the Wild West.
Yep.
And I think that where we put the crosswalks have been very helpful. Now, if we can just get people to stop at them when people are crossing between
Yep.
one intersection to go to the Plaid Pantry, and, I've seen that time and time again where they just blow on through, and, there's the person waiting to try to cross safely. So
We could probably do some studies on other jurisdictions to find neighborhood commercials or commercial light, or just kind of look at some of the use categories that are available in those
I
districts.
think Mike's suggestion of looking at some of the categories in the MUC that
Yep.
may not be appropriate for 7th, but would be appropriate for Malala and vice versa.
It's just kind of a process
And just
of
do some,
elimination. Okay.
do a little bit of some trading.
Sounds good.
Horse trading.
Thank you. I just wanted to go on the record and say I agree with questioning number 2. I have concerns in this market, with housing, why would we consider adding to a shortage? So, I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. Just going on those same two topics that have already been brought up several times. First, on the short-term rentals, I think there's agreement among all of us that this is a topic that we would like to approach very carefully given the housing crisis. If it is something like we want to make it easier or available for someone to rent a room in their primary residence, that's a different conversation and something that I'm open to. And that's actually what Airbnb was founded to be originally, and now it has become something very different. So I'm open to that. But like my colleague said, I think this is a very sensitive issue that I think would be nice to get some City Commission, Planning Commission collaboration on. And then on the MUC, I'm very glad that you guys are addressing this. I think I recall that this was on the list at the last presentation as well. And I think this dovetails nicely with some of my priorities heading into this biennium. I had talked about at our goal-setting retreat that I would like to see economic development focus beyond just the downtown corridor, where we've done a really good job, and now we've got other corridors that may have been neglected by the City Commission. And I think that it's very unfortunate that the corridors that we're talking about are mainly known for where you can get pot. So trying to find ways to diversify what is what is on that corridor would be very nice. And I think it would also be interesting to look at expanding the vertical housing tax credit zone from beyond the MUD.
Yes.
So I just wanted to throw those out there. Thank you.
Yeah, there's definitely places in the Malala corridor that we could definitely do that. There's more limited ability in the 7th Street corridor because, again, it's got the overlay of the historic district. And, again, this is, I would say, if we have a catchphrase for this commission, it is the word livability. And having lived in a coastal town where there was housing shortage, having lived in Bend, where there, again, the same thing, people can't afford to live there, who work there. Same thing with the coastal city. It is a major, major problem that we're not going to solve everything, but we're going to try to minimize you know, because I strongly believe in the fact that we need to be looking at ways, and it's in our work plan about looking at incentivizing housing. We need more people who are building housing to support a homeowner situation, first-time home buyers. I know several of us have been first-time home buyers. Not all of us are first-time home buyers, and that's the question. You know, do we want to become a state where the predominant residential occupancy is rentals? I don't think that that contributes to the livability of our communities and our rural or urban areas. We do need to have some rentals, but everybody can't, we don't want to do that for everybody. So anyway, so thank you guys. You know, as two veterans of the PC here, we know how much work gets done and all the wonderful things that you guys do to help make the city livable. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And you're having to do all that as the state keeps changing the rules.
Yes, the
out from under
goalposts
your
keep
feet.
changing.
Well, yeah, some of it meshes together with middle housing, and some of it kind of moves farther away. But
Don't
yeah.
get me started. I don't want to start. I don't want to get started about that.
Forget I said.
Sorry about that.
I told Evan to take away my soapbox. I will not get on my housing soapbox. All right, and now, last but not least, the other favorite quasi-judicial body that we have in Oregon City is the Historic Review Board.
I'm usually last. Not today.
Well, you know the saying, the first shall be last, and all of that.
Somebody said that.
Somebody said that.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Tim Powell, and I am a resident of Oregon City, and I am also the current chair of the Historic Review Board. I am here in that position tonight, to come before you tonight to give you an update on the activities of the Historic Review Board over the past year. This has been a very busy year for us, both in applications and work sessions. Not nearly as busy as Planning Commission, apparently. We are endeavoring to make the process of applications more streamlined, convenient, and cost-effective for the applicants and the staff. First of all, I'd like to thank our members who give their time and expertise and professionalism in making the hearings and work sessions effective and fair. Last year, we unfortunately lost one of our members, Sabrina Ferry, who moved with her family back east. We did, however, welcome a new member to the board in Julia Fulkerson. Julia's job as an architectural historian has been very helpful to the board, and she hit the road running at the very first meeting, so which is an excellent addition, and we are currently at full strength. The board created a biennium work plan in 2023 to help direct staff and the board throughout the 2 years, and we fully expect to complete this plan by September of 2025. This plan, which I believe you have a copy of, covered a list of projects that we hope will benefit our community, as well as make the process of historic preservation in Oregon City more effective and efficient. Over the past year, we've been working on learning about and evaluating solar panel technology and its acceptance in historic districts around the West. As energy costs continue to increase, more homeowners are considering solar as a cost-saving alternative. We have seen an increase in solar panel applications, and we feel that this trend will continue. At a day-long camp in 2023 put on by the National Association of Preservation Commissions that was hosted by the Oregon City Planning Department, we discussed this issue with attendees from around the state and around the country. From that meeting, we felt that we needed to educate ourselves on new solar technology trends. Since then, we've evaluated solar panel technologies and policies from Denver, Colorado, and other jurisdictions, both in the state and out of the state, to determine if we need to make changes to our Oregon City policy number 12, and that is solar technology. After multiple meetings and much discussion, we determined that we would keep policy 12 as written, but we did some changes to provide more visual examples so that the applicants could get a more clear picture of solar panel placement prior to making an application, and the staff would have a more objective response to questions that they may have. We will continue to monitor solar panel applications and will reevaluate our decision if changes need to be made. Another goal was public outreach. The board felt that it was important to reach out to the public to educate the historic homeowners on regulatory requirements and modifications to historic properties, as well as the grant opportunities available to them, which is something that's very important to us. This year, in October and November this year, we were able to send out a comprehensive historic homeowners packet, call it the welcome wagon, if you will, to all the historic homeowners. We intend to continue this program and couple it with educational articles in the Trail News, as well as continue with our Ruth McBride Powers Preservation Award, which is given annually in May, which is coming up. The goal in our public outreach is to promote our historic places and to instill pride in our historic city and show the benefits of historic preservation. We've been meeting and discussing these with the help of our consultant. Oops, I'm sorry, I missed it. Most recently, we have embarked on a process to discuss compatible change and are considering amending city regulations covering alterations, additions, and new construction in non-designated properties in the McLaughlin Conservation District. The current code was adopted in the 1980s, and we believe that it needs to be updated due to new technologies in windows, solar, and building materials, as well as the consideration of potential additional dwelling units to help ease the housing crisis. We've been meeting and discussing these with the help of our consultant, Kristen Miner. We were very fortunate to hire Kristen with a certified local government grant. Kristen has helped us winnow down the many aspects of this project. As part of this discussion, we've evaluated new window technologies in a presentation by window manufacturers here in this room, solar technologies, and building materials, as well as discussing square footage requirements and freestanding building sizes appropriate to the area that potentially could be approved without a public hearing. As part of this project, the board and staff wanted to get some opinions of what the community wanted, so a survey was sent out to homeowners in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and other people answered as well. We also had an open house was held and a presentation made in cooperation with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. We received a lot of compelling feedback that was very well thought out, and we appreciate all those citizens that provided feedback via the survey, as well as the attendees at the open house. Kristen, staff, and the board will continue to evaluate and discuss the information and the comments we received, as well as the information provided by Kristen in ongoing meetings with the hope of presenting our recommendations to the City Commission later this summer, requesting approval to move forward with the Type 4 legislative adoption process. I'd also like to thank Christina and the staff who make our job easier with their combined depth of preservation and legislative knowledge. Their work is exceptional. We are truly blessed in this city to have the high-quality staff that cares for this city and its functions. The board will continue to dedicate ourselves to carrying out the city's Historic Resources Program, and will work to keep historic preservation in the forefront of our public outreach programs. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to another great year. And at the risk of asking, is there anything I can help you with?
Of course there is.
I thought so.
Gentlemen.
I got my pen, I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready. Well, first of all, I guess I would like to, again, for the record, acknowledge the exceptional work that's been done by the Planning Division, in particular, Christina Robertson-Gardner. It has been something that's been near and dear to my heart since I moved here, and I appreciate the care, concern, and professional expertise that she has brought to this particular program. So don't ever retire. You can work part-time, you know. Now that your kids are grown, you know, you don't have to worry about that anymore, but you have done an excellent job, and it's much appreciated. And I will say that I did receive 2 packets at my house on the historic. So one was sent to 2 names and one was sent to the other. Anyway, I just took them both. The other thing that I want to comment on briefly is that it would be great to see if we could get a summary of the open houses, not, you know, any conclusions or findings, but just kind of what did you hear, so that the people in the conservation districts and the National Register District maybe could have some insight on that. And then I guess we're not really doing we used to do a newsletter through our CLG grant where we kind of promote stuff, and the only reason I bring it up is because I was cribbing an article that I wrote 10 years ago in one of those newsletters for something else that I need to write. So I was kind of glad that I had that as a reference. So I don't know, we're not planning to do that anymore. But I think that the outreach and the education that we're doing to try to inform people, to help them understand why Oregon City is such a special place and that our historic resources are part of what makes us Oregon City. And nobody else has that. You come here, you can see the real deal. You don't see something that's been moved someplace else and now it's in sort of a Disneyland situation. You can walk down our streets and you can see the places that people inhabited in the past and the homeowners that are stewarding them to this day. And it's really important that we continue to promote that, and I'm hoping that we'll have some recognition from our DMMO with regard to that, which makes Oregon City special. It adds to our livability, adds to our walkability. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Is it possible to get a copy of that new homeowner packet?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving on to our third fun part of the agenda, the consent agenda. We have some items on here. Does anybody have anything that they would like to have further discussion on? We have item A, a liquor license application for the Hive Tap House, Resolution 2506 and Resolution 2507.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Marl,
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So I know that I should have asked it earlier, but just the quick, I was looking at the map under item, I'm not objecting to 2507. So is the vacation have to do with the fact of something to do with where the new courthouse is? And there was part of that Kaen Road went through there? Because I went back there the other day and I thought, okay, that didn't make any sense to me. But I support the resolution. So why are we we're vacating it because there's something.
On the map.
Yeah, the map wasn't great.
It looks like they just kind of missed the right turn lane. Seriously, if you're
Yeah.
turning off a Kaen Road onto
Yeah.
Beaver Creek, the part that was already vacated goes straight ahead,
right.
but not the little chunk of
Front-
pavement.
Not the little
Makes
chunk of
turn.
pavement. Is that?
Right?
I think it's just a historical remnant piece of right.
It's a remnant, kind of like what we have with the old 82nd over on, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought when I was reading the report and I read the resolution. I thought, okay, I think that's what that says. So, since
Well,
Clackamas
I
County
also
has
think
relocated Kaen Road, so.
Well, at one point, there was thoughts of there being more public streets through the campus of Red Soils, but as we did the master planning, the roads became private, they became internal. I mean, I think.
Don't need to have that anymore. Okay, awesome. I'll sign them. Okay, so item number 8, we don't have any public hearings tonight, but item number 9, we do have general business regarding an ordinance adopting amendments to the Oregon City Municipal Code, Title 12, Public and Street Trees of Oregon City Municipal Code. And is that Dana and Josh, or just Josh? Just you, okay.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Josh Wheeler, Assistant City Engineer for the Public Works Department. Before you tonight, we have an ordinance to update our tree clearance code with respect to tree trimming. I'm here on behalf of the Public Works Street Division, as well as the Clackamas County Fire District, who both have requested that, and we chose myself as the resource to bring this forward. The first thing we did, though, before we came to you, we went before the Natural Resource Committee to get their opinion on this potential change. We went before them late last year and then came back to them, I believe it was in February. They ultimately approved or recommended unanimously to approve this ordinance. What this ordinance would do, it would change the code from having tree trimming of sidewalks from 7 feet to 8 feet, for roads from 10 feet to 14 feet, and then what's called the clear vision triangle, which is when you're at an intersection looking right or left, how much back vegetation should not be so that you can see around the corner, and change that from 8 to 10 feet. In doing this research, we looked at what metro area municipalities do with their ordinances, and you had it, I believe, in the staff report, as well as a memo in the file that talked about the various communities, ones of which also were added based on the request of the NRC. At most, we have over the road 15 feet in Hillsborough, 14 feet in 2 communities, 12 in many, and then we are down at 10. And then sidewalk generally across the board for the most part is 8 feet. And so, why is this important? Currently, Oregon Fire Code states that tree clearance should be at 13.5 feet to accommodate all fire vehicles. From a public works standpoint, we have vehicles that range anywhere from almost 12 feet up to 13 feet. And then we also provided that if you think of delivery trucks and garbage trucks, they range anywhere from 10 to 12 feet, depending on the type of truck that's out there. And so our code just seems to be a bit outdated. Every year when we do our paving projects, we go through and trim several trees ourselves at no cost to anyone. We notify homeowners about it, so in the event they would like to do the trimming themselves. Most of the time we do that. We also do that with our regular paving project that we do with contractors. We had a couple last year. But where we also run into problems is with the street sweeping, and there's some pictures in the memo that was provided, shows how when that's not trimmed high enough, our sweeper has to go around, just like with parked cars, and then we end up with leaves that can't be picked up. And so that can be a problem, not only for clogging of the sewer to cause flooding, but that makes us somewhat in violation with our NPDES or MS4 stormwater permit for clean stormwater. So that's why we're here. We're here for any questions. If you'd like to go through any more of the details of the memos or the attachments, I'm happy to do that. And we'd love to hear your feedback.
I would be interested in knowing a little bit of the backstory from the fire department.
So in general, they've made comments in the past of, having concerns that, going through and hitting trees can cause delays because they want to be careful in how they come through the community. By having trees trimmed at a proper height, they wouldn't have as much of an issue. I would say that the driver of this request really did come from the street division, but the fire department had made comments in the past, and so as we looked into this, we reached out to them to see if they supported it, because we knew they had commented in the past.
I guess the other thing the question I would ask too is that, as trees grow, they should only be trimmed up a certain amount. So what I'm concerned is that in order to comply with some of this, there may be trees that need to have an exception because they're not ready to be trimmed up to that height yet because of their growth or how long they've been there or whatever. So how is something like that being taken into account?
So it was a very astute comment, because also a comment raised at the NRC. There were 2 comments that I felt were the majority of what I heard at the NRC. One was, we don't want to end up trimming trees too early and therefore keeping them from growing. The general response from our street division, who was present at that meeting as well, was that in general, trees don't end up having branches that cause us problems. They aren't long enough or big enough when they're that age to really get to where they do cause a problem. You do have, those little sucker areas, which
Yes.
really should be trimmed off to make it grow properly upward, which the NRC seemed to agree with, that yes, in general, yeah, you may have a limb here or there that happens, but for the most part, they do happen later in life, not in the early stages of the tree. The second concern they had was enforcement. They were concerned that anyone that either didn't have the physical or economic means to do trimming, that they wouldn't be hurt in any way. And our position was that that's not something that is normally code enforced. However, when a complaint comes in and you have to address the complaint, but that's not a common complaint that comes in. We spoke with code enforcement about that to ensure that was a valid comment. So in general, our goal is not to go seek people to do this work, even, the 100 trees that we may trim this year for the next slurry seal project. We're still going to do it. It's just that if others do it, now they have a means to know what the standard is. And our goal that if you went forward on this would be some sort of promotion, probably in the newsletter and some social media to say, hey, things have changed. Want to let everyone be aware of it.
So you sort of answered that second part of it is, who would be doing the trimming. We have a lot of knowledgeable homeowners. We have some not so knowledgeable homeowners, and we don't want people to be doing what I like to call whack and chop, because that doesn't help. That doesn't help the tree in the long term. The other thing I think that concerns me a little bit, and we don't have any control over it, but I've noticed that sometimes people, and we've had this happen in front of our city hall down on Center Street, where somebody goes by and they just decide they're going to break a branch off or something crazy, which doesn't help your tree whatsoever. We just have to do a little more education for people. Like, please don't do that. But yeah, I think this is, this is reasonable. I think if we can take these things on a case by case, because sometimes there's I don't think we have fir trees in the right of way, but I know that people sometimes want to limb those things up and they don't always accommodate that. But I think we've been, with the revisions to the trees that we are recommending people use, and our Friends of Trees program where we can get people to plant the right thing. We won't hopefully end up with too many places in Oregon City where people have planted dogwoods in the parking strip, which are not a street tree. They're a great yard tree, but they are not a street tree. They look lovely, but they're problematic. Anybody else? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Not being incredibly familiar with the process of tree trimming, I'm just wondering if there is any potential for, if we adopt this and would result in any need to remove trees or harm to trees where they just can't recover and would end up, dying.
I would say, are we going to see any really different practice in what occurs in the field? Probably not. Sure. And so I don't think we'll end up in a situation where we're, over trimming a tree or anything like that. I know the street department has said that, they do what they need to make sure they're not breaking limbs, because trimming is much better than breaking, as long as trimmed properly, pruned properly. And their whole goal here is to make sure that if people, want to do it themselves, they have a standard to follow that also is, if it's 10 now and they do it per 10, well, that doesn't help our situation because we're going to hit it with our 12-foot vehicle. And so we want people that if they want to, they now know that this is where modern day vehicles are, and it gives them that opportunity. But again, if they don't want to take that opportunity, we will still trim it with our guys that have been trimming trees for several years and, have that practice down fairly well.
Did you get a recommendation from, I saw the memo, but there was no, this is what NRC is recommending, or did I miss that?
They voted unanimously to recommend it. Okay. To go forward.
Okay, yeah, I was looking for their recommendation or how they voted, but that was not a part of an attachment to this.
Yeah, I think it's probably in meeting notes or something, but I did not have that.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
Well, we'll get that we'll talk to Pete.
It's on the second page of the staff report.
Second page?
At the very end.
Yeah, it's stated in the staff report.
Right, the two options
Yeah.
we have, it says the NRC
Okay.
recommended approval.
Okay. All right, is there any further questions, or is there a motion for the first reading of Ordinance 25-1004. Before we do that, I just wanted, so did we not change the fee in lieu situation in the code where we said that we're happy to do that, but that's the last resort? I'm not sure how that was worded because I was looking at it in this and it didn't really say that.
That would be a planning question?
She said yes.
Okay.
Okay,
But that's not a part of this.
no, but the section that he put in the packet still had the old paragraph. That's what I was asking about. You didn't see that?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
But we haven't made a change, to fee in lieu.
Well, it
We
got.
talked about we need to.
Yeah, well, she just nodded and said we changed it, because section 12.0845 says gifts in lieu, fee in lieu planning and funding.
I'm going to take a guess at why that may be that way. This is code that's coming from our online portal. My understanding is our online code is about a year behind of
Okay.
getting updated from what I've
Okay.
heard. Yeah, and so,
Okay.
that's probably what's available online at the moment.
Okay, all right. Motion, please.
I'll move to approve first reading of ordinance 25-1004.
Second.
Ta-da.
Ordinance number 25-1004, an ordinance adopting amendments to Oregon City Municipal Code, Title 12, Public and Street Trees of the Oregon City Municipal Code.
All right, let's have the roll call.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Marl,
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Did you say the online version is a year behind? Where's somebody supposed to go for accurate information? Like us, for instance. I don't mean to put you on the hot seat over that, but,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
online portal needs to match what we,
and
This is-
that's a service, right? It's not-
Yes,
we don't do that.
this is an issue with the service. Jacob and I have spoken to other city recorders who use Unicode as well, and it recently got, in the past year, purchased by another company, and it's led to a lot of service issues. The one reliable person that we had to communicate with left the company. It's been a bit of a mess. We just got the supplement for, I believe it was the end of 2023, finally approved, and are going to be receiving that in the mail sometime soon, and then we'll be able to initiate the supplement for everything since. They have confirmed we'll be able to do all of that all at once. It's just been a real bad adventure in customer service land.
yikes. Well, that doesn't sound promising.
No, I'd be curious if there are other services that we can use if.
Oh, I'm sure if there is, Jacob has probably already investigated it thoroughly. I know his tenacity. Come on down. All right, so on our agenda for this evening, we have one more item, and it is a discussion regarding cemetery fees.
Yeah, before we start the discussion, I do want to correct, the Hillendale planting is at 11 a.m.
11 a.m., okay.
11 a.m. on April 19th, we looked it up. Sorry about that.
Ooh, I can sleep in.
There you go. So we do have a presentation, which we'll pull up here, and while that's being pulled up, we'll just kind of talk a little bit about kind of the background here. So fees for services at Mountain View Cemetery have not been updated since 2014. That's our current resolution that we're operating under. That resolution was never tied to inflation. So as our costs have increased in staffing, the costs per service have not increased. So we're here today to discuss some potential options to kind of bring those back into alignment. We'll look at some comparisons of comparable cemeteries in the market, and then talk about kind of the perpetual endowment fund, which is a long-term maintenance fund that would care for the cemetery long into the future. So we'll kind of go through the agenda here. go. So we're going to just kind of do a little, briefing on how the cemetery works. There's a couple different types of costs. There's pre-need versus at-need. We'll discuss what those are. We'll talk about this idea of an endowment fund, how it works, what that, projected financing would look like. Then we'll look at a cost breakdown, current, and what our current subsidy is. So just in kind of round numbers, the cemetery has about $600,000 a year in operating expenses and takes in about $300,000 a year in revenue. So today it is about 50% subsidized. We will look at the different options that, it's a very large menu of prices. You'll see that in your packets. Then we'll talk about kind of expense allocation. So there's different components in the cemetery. There's kind of like what we call the main cemetery, which is the working cemetery. That's where we're actually holding services, doing burials. But then there's kind of the historic nature of the Pioneer Cemetery, the more recreational or memorial aspect of the Veterans Memorial, the Parents of Murdered Children Memorial, and then the Scattering Canyon, which represents kind of the forested area that butts up to Newell Creek. We'll talk a little bit about how the expenses break down to each one of those components. And then we'll look at 4 options for fees that we do not currently have. 2 of those would be fees that kind of, match services we're already providing. 2 of those would be fees that are related to brand new services that we just don't have pricing for today, that we need to set prices for. All right, so looking at kind of the background on pre-need versus at-need, there's these terms that we use very frequently in the cemetery office. Pre-need is just like it sounds. A family comes in to plan for their future burials. Those costs can be paid in advance. They're typically paid at the time that they're coming into the office. And that is, think of it kind of like a real estate transaction. A lot of this is purchasing space for the interment. So a ground lot, a crypt in a mausoleum, a niche. It's essentially a real estate transaction. They're buying a plot of land. You can do that well in advance, and then, at need, you are paying for the costs of the service. There's also the ability to purchase the setting of the granite headstone in advance, so we can do that at pre-need. All the engraving is completed except the final date, and then at the time of need, we send in the engravers to do that final engravement. The stone is set in place a few months after ordering. Then there's the at-need. This is kind of the unplanned, sudden death in the family. We can kind of do all of those costs all at once with an at-need service. They come in to plan for an immediate burial. Those costs must be paid before burial. The one thing I will point out is even if you do those pre-need services, you're buying the lot and everything, some of the services that are covered at need still need to be paid before we can provide the service. So if they did not do a pre-need where they bought kind of the burial lot, the crypt or the niche, that would need to happen at need. But then there are just fees associated with this. There's fees we pay to the state of Oregon for processing and recording, the internment fee. If it's a casket ground burial, it's a state requirement that be placed in a liner, a concrete liner. We sell those concrete liners, so you can purchase them from us. You can also purchase them through a registered funeral home. And then there's the memorial option. So again, if you did not kind of do that pre-need planning, you didn't purchase your headstone in advance, you can do that at need. The final date engraving, there's a small cost for that if you did do pre-need. And then bronze name bars or name plates, we only allow those to be purchased at the time of burial. We don't allow that pre-need. Are there any questions about that? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about an endowment care fund. So this is something that we do not have today. So basically the idea is Oregon revised statute allows us to collect fees that basically get placed into a savings account, into a trust fund to pay for the maintenance in the future. At some point in time, we will no longer be able to sell lots in the cemetery. Now it's just maintenance, right? So how do we pay for that future? This is where the endowment trust fund would come in. So there are minimums here. What you see are the minimum percentages required by state law. So typically for the ground lots, they're 9%, and then for mausoleums, it's 5%. It's not a ton of revenue, as you can see, if we go with those minimums, but it is something that we don't have today. And it saves for that future point in time where, we are no longer earning revenue from the cemetery to pay for the maintenance. This pays for that perpetual maintenance. It can only be used for that future maintenance, and you start to draw down that balance once the cemetery files for, kind of not being a working cemetery anymore. I will say that other municipal cemeteries do have this in place. City of Bend is an example. They have a municipal cemetery. I believe their current balance is somewhere in the $1 million range. They've been doing this for a very long time. They've accrued a large balance. They continue to do that over time. When their cemetery closes, that's what they will use to pay for the perpetual maintenance. So I'm not going to go through every price on here, unless you want me to. But basically what we're looking at is, what we're seeking from you is a recommendation and how you'd like to move forward on a price increase. We've put together 3 options here, and I'd like to talk about them as kind of from the subsidy perspective. I think it's easier to understand. So today, the 50% subsidy, 50% of our expenses there are subsidized by general fund. So kind of option 1 would be a pretty hefty increase. That would be 100% cost recovery. It's basically doubling every single price. It could have market effects to do that. We may become uncompetitive going that high. One of the reasons that our cemetery actually does pretty well for a municipal cemetery because we are on the lower end of the scale. The second option would be to shoot for a 75% cost recovery and a 25% subsidy. That represents a 50% price increase, and you can see kind of the comparison there versus our current price and what that would mean in each of these categories. And then the third option would just be a 25% price increase. That would get us to 65% cost recovery and 35% subsidy. So I'll leave this here for a moment and open it up for questions at this point if there are any.
Go ahead. I have a question. So currently, based on what you said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the cemetery is operating at roughly a $300,000 loss.
Yes.
Every year. Okay. And I recognize this is a service, it's not intended to make money, anything like that. And you pointed out at one point in your presentation that the fees are not tied to inflation.
That's correct.
And so I'm curious, none of the proposals give that as an option. I'm just kind of curious if that was intentional or what's the reasoning behind that? Because from where I'm at, if we don't tie something to inflation, we're going to be having this conversation in, not too long.
Yep. Thank you for that point of clarity. All 3 proposals would tie this to inflation going forward. Okay. That's not shown here, but that is our intention.
I think it's definitely something we've talked about. Over the years, we've done a pretty good job of getting almost all of our fees on a similar calendar CPI inflation adjustment. It's usually either January 1 or July 1. Some of the parks are the last area where we're kind of focusing in on that need this discussion about appropriate fees, but then as we adopt those, our recommendation is going to be tying them all to the same CPI index that we use for the others. I had also had a question from Commissioner Smith. Approximately capacity remaining within the cemetery. Do you know off the top of your head, or do we need to follow up?
I do. It's a rough number, but if you look at kind of the space we have available today, we have roughly 20 years left based on our current number of sales. Things that could affect that would be, so if you think about the cemetery, there's the new sections, which we call M&N. Those are mainly scheduled to be ground lots, which obviously are much larger uses of space. If we constructed more mausoleums or more niches, we could actually extend that life even more, utilize that space more efficiently. I think that is a conversation we should have here at some point. But the way our cemetery is currently set up and operating, if we did exactly the same thing, we'd have about 20 years left.
So have you read in periodicals regarding the cemetery in Hollywood that has used up all of its land, and now they are going up.
Yep.
They are building some of the mausoleums in the one that I read about and heard about. It's I think it's 4 or 5 stories. I'm not saying we would do that, but I think that's an option. We're talking about, space. That would be the thing. So I have been asked, of course, several times by constituents, why do we have a cemetery? And so Rocky and I, of course, know the history about all of this, but just for the short version of the record is that the Mountain View Cemetery started with 5 acres. It was donated by William L. Holmes to provide a location for burial for his Masonic brothers. And it started out with the Masonic Cemetery, which is the one that's the furthest towards the back, but one of the oldest sections. So that's how it originally got started, and then it got more donations, and then we added and we added. So we are not one of the only jurisdictions that has a municipal cemetery.
We are not.
So it is part of our historic legacy here in Oregon City.
I will point out Lake Oswego actually just acquired this. This is actually a trend that is occurring throughout the state of Oregon where some of, these smaller private cemeteries that, are full, they can no longer maintain them. They're being turned over to city parks and rec districts all across the state. There are other municipalities. I mentioned Bend. Pendleton is another one that manages a pretty large cemetery through their parks and rec department. I do want to kind of hit your point about the building up concept as well. That's something we've talked about, and it's not in this proposal, but something to think about for the future. So one of the fees that we'll look at in a little bit are for the new niche wall that we constructed last year. That project cost about $100,000, and at these prices, we would expect to earn about $300,000 from selling those. So it's a pretty good return on investment.
Yes,
we have
exactly.
4 more walls on that mausoleum where we could do the installation of new niches. So
Nice.
building up is definitely probably the smarter business option.
I'm going to call him.
Missing middle mausoleums.
There you go. I see Aquila. She's like, oh my God.
So real quick, when you said 300,000 at these prices, do you mean today's prices or?
The prices that we're proposing here, so that's not even including inflation, just at the prices that we're proposing for those. We propose a little bit higher pricing on these because they're kind of unique actually, and we'll explain why.
Yes.
They're a much nicer option, so they're a little bit.
Commissioner Merle.
I don't have any.
Oh, wait, your light was on. Okay.
It was to make that comment.
Yes, thank you. That was very good. Don't give them any ideas about adding stuff into the state requirements. Oh my God. I think we probably would all be in agreement that we need to index this to account for inflation. It makes sense. It is, I think, being cost effective for our community, and we would release, that's not the word I want. We would decrease the dependence on general fund for this. So I think that would be helpful.
Yep.
Do we have any comments about whether we're looking at, on the cost recovery? I think we definitely need to be looking at cost recovery. So 75%, I don't support 65. I think we need to start having this help pay for itself. Any comments?
I support the 75%.
Rocky?
I do have some comparisons coming up as well that we can look at.
I was actually going to ask
Yeah,
that.
all right,
What are
let's go
other-
for it.
Thank you.
Look at that.
That would help.
Okay.
Can you jump to the next one? Ooh, man, that's hard to read. It's very tiny.
It's not bad.
Can you go back one?
Yeah,
Are you
big
going
screens.
to talk about this?
I was going to talk about markups. Do you want me to do that first or do comparisons?
Well, we're talking about the other fees. Go ahead. Go on with the comparison, and then we'll go back to that one.
So this is just a kind of a roundup of fees. It gets a little confusing because everybody has a different price structure. So what we
Right.
tried to do was average that. That's the column on the far right in the yellow. There are some that are, much higher. So a good example of that is Riverview Cemetery has some prices that are much higher than what we charge. They also provide a much higher level of service than we are capable of doing. One of the big differences in the way that we operate as a municipal cemetery, we do not allow, kind of that what you picture the service next to the casket as it's being lowered. We don't allow people to be directly next to the casket and the hole.
And the
just from-
hole, yeah, that makes
Just from
sense.
liability reasons. Riverview does offer that. They offer graveside services. So, you know, there's some things that account for the services that they provide. We would not be able to provide those. If we priced it at the level of Riverview, we'd be probably uncompetitive. There's a range here. We look at like metro cemeteries. That's another great example of a kind of a municipally owned cemetery. They have several in their system, including Lone Fir, which is the main one that comes to mind. So if you look at kind of the average prices there on the side versus our current prices, you'll see that in most categories, we're either like right at the lower end or pretty under. There are a couple where we're, you know, kind of on par with the average prices, but definitely at the lower end of the
Are
market.
the only ones on here that are municipal are the metro, is the metro one?
Metro cemeteries would be municipal. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I believe Gethsemane is another one.
I think the other ones are private.
And then pretty much everything else is private, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we fit kind of a niche space, you know. We're a cheaper option for families typically.
A more cost-effective option, I'd rather say. than cheaper.
Cost-effective option.
Yes.
My immediate thought, just looking at this, is, you know, there's, again, like a wide range of differences in prices, and we're looking at just a flat percentage increase, and I'm wondering if there is room or if it makes sense to more look at the individual services and say, well, this is, you know, where we're relatively competitive, we don't want to move much here, maybe a 25% increase, but this we are substantially over or under, maybe this warrants a 100%, you know, price increase, and look at it more like an individual service level would be what I'd be curious about.
I like that idea.
And we do have some of that information available as well.
Okay, move on.
Okay. We'll go back to vendor fees. We'll talk about that a little bit. So every price that you see here, every price that we've talked about so far has no vendor associated with it. That's staff time, admin costs, things like that, things that we're providing as a service. These fees are direct vendor markups. So we have vendors that we utilize to provide headstones in a variety of different ways. We have our natural stones. We have kind of what you imagine as like the flat granite stone. And then we have the niche and crypt memorial options. These are all our current prices. We'll talk about the new niche options at the end. So this again kind of hits on what Commissioner Wilson just said. We kind of have this all over the board. So some of these markups are like 5%, some are 2%. It gets a little confusing to explain to the customers. So this proposal is really looking at just kind of a straight markup across the board. It does end up on some of the cheaper options that they might go down a little bit in price, but ultimately it ends up, these are direct expense allocations. We pay a fee, we receive revenue for it. So makes it a little easier to track, to bill, and should reduce our admin time overall. That's where you'd see the cost savings.
So color option 1, 2, 3, what's the difference?
Sorry, the color option references the color of the granite. So there's different colors that you can purchase, and depending on the color that you purchase, they're more expensive. So there's like black, there's gray, there's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a brown, like with flecks in it. So there's different prices based on these are different choice options for the customer.
So let's just talk about the top line.
Yep.
So right now, single cremation headstone, depending on the color, we're charging $920 or $970 or $1060.
Yes, that's the current price. Yep.
And the suggestion here is to go down to $810, $860, $940?
So these don't have the service fee attached to them. It's just the vendor cost. This is like balancing out that. So we can give you a little bit, maybe a better clarification on that. It's easier to see in the natural stone cost and engraving services. You can see the line for the stone. The price that you see in the pink column is the current price. That has everything wrapped into it. you have the stone engraving and then the stone cost, those combined equal that. That's where you see the price increase. So that first, the headstones one might be a little confusing to understand. I can get you some clarity on that. There's costs associated with it, when you combine them, they're increased. I'm sorry if that's confusing. Yeah.
As I look at this, it looks like most of the options that you've presented here, prices are going down from what or a lot of them anyway, are going down. And I don't see a reason why we need to go down. I understand you're trying to flatten out the markup, to make the markup the same, but.
So just for an example, on the color option 1, if you look at the natural stone cost and engraving for the small natural stone, current price is $13.70 for that color option 1. The proposed markup of the 2.5% would go to $9.80 for the stone engraving, $400 for the stone cost. That combined cost would go to $13.80. So that's the increase.
Okay, so you have to combine those two columns.
Yeah. So we're trying to show that there's a cost to do the work and there's a cost for the stone itself.
Right.
And the combined cost is increasing. Again, sorry if that was confusing, we can clarify that.
7 would go up to 1380.
Correct.
Right.
The 1610 is color option 2.
Yep.
Which would go from 1610 to 1660.
Yep.
So I think 1370, 1610, and 1900 represent color option 1, color option 2, color option 3, which then they're proposing, like for color option 3, 1970 versus 1900.
Yeah, okay.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you for that.
But back up on the headstones again. Those, almost without exception, those are all going down.
Yeah, and again, there's the engraving cost, which, I'm sorry that that's confusing. There's an engraving cost that's in there that's not, it's not reflecting properly. I can send you an updated there. So
it actually would be more then?
Yeah. Correct. This is reflective of just the stone itself.
Well, then you've got final date. Oh, that's on existing stone.
Yep. So that's where you would have
You got
like
stone
your-
engraving, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So the 2% markup on all service related, that's for the final date engraving, all the things that would go into that would increase that. It's confusing because it's represented in the comment. It's not shown as a cost.
Is 2% enough?
2% represents our staff time based on, an analysis of what it takes to do the administration, to do the, contacting the company, scheduling it, the billing time. It's pretty
Seems a
reasonable.
little low to me.
Okay. So I was thinking that same thing. So if we're looking at, for example, the proposed markup for the, the natural stone, small, it's a difference of $10. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that the staff cost there, you're estimating to be $10. Is that, am I understanding?
Yeah, that doesn't even,
I can't imagine that.
I can't imagine either that covers anything.
Yeah.
Sure, yep. Yeah, so again, we have records, particularly on the maintenance side. It's very easy to track the time for that. We have a work order system that does that. We're making some assumptions on the staff time based on how much time it takes them to contact and bill. There's no real maintenance staff time associated with that other than sometimes showing a stone. It's mainly office staff that are, just calling and scheduling. But yeah, we can dig into that a little more.
Seems to me it would be twice that amount to me. Well, sounds like you've got some questions about why it's so low for staff time.
Do we want to keep going? Anything
Yes,
else
let's
we
keep
want?
going.
So this is just kind of a breakdown, and this goes to kind of that subsidy component. So the cemetery is kind of broken into these three sections. There's the section that really represents the Veterans Plaza, the Parents of Murdered Children Memorial, the Historic Cemetery. That comprises about 11 acres of the cemetery. It's 20% of the total cemetery acreage, and it accounts for about 22% of the expense allocation. A lot of our expense here is just kind of that general maintenance, you know, making sure it's clean, making sure that headstones are trimmed, things like that. We're not performing any services necessarily in this site, although we did actually have one last year, which was very unique. And then just kind of like the water bill for the Parents of Murdered Children, just, you know, kind of the expenses associated with turning on those different irrigation systems. There's the scattering canyon that represents 17 acres. It's about 30% of the total cemetery acreage. It's only about 3% of our expense allocation. We're not doing a lot of work down in there. There's a small trail that we maintain, you know, a couple times a month we go down there, we clean it up so that people can walk down there. It's mainly used for scattering cremains. And then there's the main cemetery, which represents about 29 acres. It's about 50% of the total acreage, but it represents about 75% of the expense allocation. And so you can see that in kind of the dollar amounts, that's how they break down. That comes out to roughly $607,000. That's our current budget, annual budget. So the main bulk of it is kind of the working cemetery. There's this component that's associated with this historic purpose, the memorial purpose, and then just kind of natural space. So, you know, the conversation here is really about this subsidy. Does it make sense to have a subsidy? Are we going for full cost recovery? This is where we look at this and say, maybe there is a place for a subsidy because some of these things are not, it's more historical. It's not, you know, a service that's being provided. One of the comments from one of our PRAC members, Ken Wooster, we did a tour. We've been doing a lot of conversation about this and getting some good feedback from them. One of the comments on the tour was, you know, is it fair to ask a family who comes in today to pay for, you know, the maintenance of somebody who was buried in the 1800s, and we're trying to recover that. And, you know, there's this balance here that we're trying to reach. So I think that's really what we're here asking you is how you'd like to proceed, how you'd like to think about this going forward. The main questions at hand are kind of what cost recovery are we looking to reach? What kind of subsidy are we comfortable with? We want to tie this to inflation going forward so that we're kind of fixing the problem for the future. And then the third question is really about this perpetual endowment, setting ourselves up for the eventual time when we no longer are able to earn revenue.
So just to your comment that you just made about is it fair, my thoughts to that are if the money's coming from the general fund, people are paying for it anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, it is fair to ask because, you know, the cemetery may be a cemetery, but it's also an open space and it's kind of a park in a way.
It is.
And, you know, it's a place for contemplation. It's a place for people to walk and hike. You can learn a lot of information by looking at some of the headstones and seeing who was there when, you know, and speculate what's going on with that. So it covers a lot of things, and I think we need to have an endowment. I was surprised when I read this that we didn't have one. We need to have that. This is going to be there in perpetuity, and we need to have a way to take care of it. And as you said, the general fund's already covering some of those costs. So let's try to do some cost recovery, at the right size of the cost recovery. So we're not pricing ourselves, you know, out of the market. You know, fortunately or unfortunately, people are still going to be passing away. So it's going to still be happening. And we need to, you know, if they want to come here, we want to make sure that it's the best possible experience. And I think we need to cover our expenses. And as Tony said, we have not been, past commissions have not been as fiscally responsible as we should have been. We should have been doing this all along. So now we're playing catch up, and let's just get it done. So do we have a motion or a suggestion? Are we asking for a motion?
I don't think we are today. So we do plan to bring a resolution back.
Yeah. I think it was just to get an initial presentation about what we're trying to do, kind of get some guidance on where you're comfortable in us heading, and then we can address some of the questions that we heard, bring back clarifications, and a resolution to actually implement whatever the new fee schedule is going to be, and then the inflationary clause.
Well, let me just ask the question. Go ahead, Michael.
Mayor, I think you made a comment that the 35% increase seemed reasonable to you.
No, I said it did
50%.
not. I said the 60%. Can you go back to that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that makes sense to me is the 75% cost recovery.
75, okay, so
Yeah. The 65% cost recovery does not make sense to me. It doesn't get us where we need to go. I'm not quite ready to go 100%. You know, I could go 80, but we don't have 80.
okay, so let's forget about the subsidy number for a minute. So you're okay with a 50% increase?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Commissioner Morrow is as well.
I actually wouldn't, I don't think that a cookie cutter approach to everything is the right option.
That's the next thing I was going to say. And that was something that bothered me when I read this. If it's a flat whatever percent, that's assuming that every price you have now is correct.
Sure. And they may not be.
And they may not be.
Yep.
So whatever percentage we're headed for, I would like to, and I think I'm reading into Commissioner Wilson's comment that we'd like to see that weighted come out to that.
Yeah.
But less where we're already on the high side, more where we're way low, instead of across the board.
Do we feel like 75% cost recovery is a good target in that? Not saying that that's where it would end up,
Yes.
but do
Yeah.
you feel like that's a good target?
Yes, I think you have consensus that we do.
If it's also, if we're not only looking at a 75% cost recovery, but we're also separate from that, if I'm understanding, an endowment, separate from that, tying it to inflation.
Plus,
Okay.
going through, your suggestion was to take a look at where we're really low, we need to raise it, you know,
Yeah.
and go through individually, you know, we're not going to do that, but you have a better sense of what those are.
Yep.
So if, you know, the market says it's 20 and we're at 2, you know, we need to bring that up.
Yep.
I was just going to say that I agree with what was stated. I guess when I saw this, I just saw this more of an illustration, and that I just kind of assumed that if we gave the bottom line, we want to see 75% cost recovery, that we could then come back with the numbers of what it would look like weighted to how it would fit into the market.
And that's what we would try.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that. Does that help?
I think so. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to shoot for 75% cost recovery, but individual increases based on relative level compared to market
Yes.
prices,
Right.
but with the goal of being 75% at the end of the day.
Yeah, so we could be a little, you know, we could be a little lower, but
Yeah.
if it's too low, it needs to be increased.
Understood,
Yeah,
yeah. But
okay.
we'll do it on an individual by basis with the goal of it being
Right.
75% cost recovery.
Okay?
And then when we come, I'd like to see what those proposed increases would be, again,
Definitely.
compared to other locations, just to kind of get a visual in one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, what we'll try to bring back to you for the resolution will be current price, change in price, average price at comparable cemeteries. So you can see a very clear picture. This gives us a great target to shoot for, and that's what we'll bring back to make it a little
So are
clearer.
the ones that you looked at on the list, are they, obviously they're not in comparable size, because I mean, I've been to Riverview, it's huge.
Yeah, they range in size. Some of the metro cemeteries are also
Yeah.
very large.
Yeah.
There's also some that are much smaller than us, that, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
It was also pointed out to me when I spoke to this, about this was someone that most of these comparisons are for-profit companies
Oh, the goals, yes.
That is true, yeah. So,
and
well,
probably provide a higher level of service.
yeah, some are for-profit, some are not government, but would be like a nonprofit, religious organization or something like that.
Yeah. We stopped one slide short when you had those new fee proposals up.
We did, yeah.
It just caught my eye that a $200 charge for 5 hours of staff time and a $100 charge for 1 hour staff time it doesn't kind of compute to me.
No,
They might be mixed up.
so these
No,
are.
the 200 isn't enough. If 100 is enough for 1 hour, 200's not enough for 5
Oh,
hours.
no, definitely not for 5 hours. Oh,
Yeah.
no, definitely.
So these are fees that we don't have today. Right now, the service is included in the fee that you're paying. So it's kind of covering the cost of that time. That being said, you're absolutely right. The $200 is not 5 hours of staff time, but we did look at the market for this one. So that is what
Maybe
other.
it's 450, I don't know.
Yeah. This is just a proposal for a new fee. It's something that we're not doing currently. The other one that we're not doing currently is what's known as a second right to internment. Again, it kind of goes back to that idea that when you purchase the lot, it's actually like a real estate transaction and you own the land. The first right of internment is included with the purchase of a casket lot. The cemetery permits up to 4 cremation interments on top of the casket lot. We don't charge an extra fee, what's called a second right to internment. We charge a service fee for digging it up and placing it, but other cemeteries in the area.
So wait,
Yeah.
I read that wrong. So you have a plot that's got a casket in it.
Yep.
And then you can you're saying that
4 urns.
You could put 4 urns, okay, all right. I kept thinking, okay, well, 4 urns in one plot, that doesn't sound bad to me, you know?
Yeah.
But we're talking 5, that would be a total of 5. You have the
It's a
casket,
total of
you have
5.
the other. Okay,
Casket underneath,
Okay.
urns on top.
all right,
Yep.
got it.
So there's an administrative cost to that. There's paperwork that we have to do. We don't charge for the administrative time of that. We do charge for the actual digging of the grave.
I did that.
Can I? So I would also be curious, as we're talking about, again, like fees and looking at things like individually, I'd be curious in terms of like 75% cost recovery for what we're already charging for, and then what would it look charging fees that we don't charge anything for,
Yep.
in addition to that, to try and help kind of close the gap.
You got it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically what we'll bring back with the resolution will be the current, what we call the fee menu, right? The current fee menu, the proposed fee menu, and a comparison of what other cemeteries are doing. Okay. And then there's just one more slide. So this is the new niche columbarium wall on the left that was installed in 2024. It's very beautiful. What it did is give us these new options. So we have these new, on the right, you see these new memorial plaque options. They're very detailed. You can add pictures. There's even,
QR codes.
People do QR codes, and you can set up like a digital memorial. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it now.
Put in a QR code.
Our fee structure doesn't include the complexity of these new plaque options. So we did look at the cost of those, and this is kind of the pricing structure. So location matters on the wall, which is an interesting thing in the cemetery world.
Yes.
People like to be right at kind of eye height, and so those are the more desirable
How do you get
locations.
flowers
And
up
so-
on the top one?
Yeah, so we charge a little bit more for kind of at this height, and then there's the top and the bottom that we charge a little bit less for.
How do you get, if you want to, you have one of those up there on the top, how do you get your flowers in your vase up there?
So we have a big long stick.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I was thinking something like a cool, like a library ladder, you know?
Yeah, that would be cool.
Roll across there. Rolls along. Yeah, rolls along, in a very defined track, and you just roll, you know.
Yep.
You knock people's flowers off as you go by.
So these are just designed to meet this new service that we can offer. So this will be in that resolution as well.
Okay,
Just
yes.
these new options. that
We
are
should,
available.
yes, we should have options. We should charge for the options.
All right. I think that's all I've got.
We haven't gotten into, there was a cartoon not too long ago, and I may still have it for you, but it was it was a crypt, and it had an audio component to it, and I thought, oh my God. So the person's voice comes back from the dead, you know.
Yep.
It might be a thing, I don't know.
That is a thing.
QR code is for.
That's what the QR code is for.
The QR code takes you to typically a digital website where there's videos and pictures and.
Oh, my God. Okay. All right. So you've got some direction, and we have one more item, but we are going to take a break. Let's come back at 8:50. We are back on air for the recess. Thank you so much. We have 2 more items on the agenda. We have communications from city manager. We're going to take a look at our proposed goals.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I did provide so obviously we had our goal session, goal setting session, went back, tried to summarize where I felt we had consensus as well as information from the worksheets that we worked on together in groups, circulated this amongst all the department heads who were in attendance for that event, and then circulated to the commissioners for comments. What you see here, I did receive comments from Commissioner Mitchell. These are red lines that he provided. Generally, I have no concerns. They look fine to me. So, not sure how you'd like to proceed. If you're comfortable with these, we would clean this up, get it on put it on our website, kind of material, background and all that kind of stuff, clean it up. Or if you'd like to take this and take a little more time to digest it and provide me red lines, just looking for a little direction on how you'd like to proceed at this point.
So Mike, under your second bullet, there's no page numbers on here, so under the create a diverse, so you've got methods to encourage, I think you're talking about a buy local program.
Yeah.
So why don't we just say that?
As long as everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, find methods to encourage
it's-
Oregon City-based business to take part in the city's procurement process. I mean, I think we already try to do as much as we can in terms to buy local.
So buy local would be the city buying locally from local businesses for the services and or products that we receive. I guess when I read this, I wasn't sure if this was trying to encourage businesses, local business to be more involved when we send out requests for proposals or infrastructure projects
I
that we
read
get
it
bidding on.
I read it as both.
That's what I intended, was both.
Okay, okay.
And that may not be the right wording.
We can edit that in some way.
I had mentioned something like that to our economic development manager. Good. Go ahead.
So I appreciate the red lines. The first comment that I have is under the support economic development and tourism. Just so I saw the red line to add the city's special event grant process, but I think that we ought to keep it as the city grant process because now we have the adaptive reuse
Right.
grant process that also falls under economic development that ought to continually be refined and improved.
Okay, so maybe just, of all city grants or something?
City grant processes.
what it processes.
City grant process.
I think it was, I
City
think we
grant
could try
processes
to
and
be
leave out the
general
word special
because it
event,
was
yeah.
looking at,
I forgot about the other processes then.
Okay.
Under increased community engagement opportunities with the red line that says, this is the fourth bullet, where you added and improve communication with the city commission. Is this meaning improve the commission's communication with the public? Is that staff's communication with us? What was the intention?
Well, because it calls out the CIC and the neighborhood association, my intention was to increase information that we get from those two groups up to us,
Okay.
So you're talking about going up and down,
particularly up.
two-way communication.
I think we do a lot better job of down than we do up. So that's what I was trying to get to, was hearing more from the CIC and the neighborhood associations, or from the CIC on behalf of the neighborhood associations.
Well, I think, I like the way you split it out because sometimes the CIC doesn't necessarily represent a neighborhood association and they should be able to feel they can come here and tell us whatever they need to tell us.
Right.
Without going through the CIC if they don't want to.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify on that.
Yep.
And then the new bullet, what you guys were just talking about with the procurement processes, I have a hard time with that, not because I don't want us to be supporting our small businesses, but because like local governments everywhere, we are facing budget issues and stretching every dollar as far as it can go at the expense of maybe not having that dollar go to an Oregon City business is not something that I want to shut ourselves off to.
Okay, well, I didn't intend that we would pay more in order to support an
No,
Oregon City
they have to
business.
be- they have to
Just
be
to make sure that
competitive.
they're aware
Yeah.
anytime there's an opportunity
Right, they
for
should-
them.
yeah.
And if their quote comes in high, they don't get it. But if it comes in,
Within
equal or lower.
Within
I
reason,
just,
yeah.
yeah, just so they can be involved in the process, know what we're out there buying and have an opportunity to quote on it if they want to.
Okay, that
Not-
sounds good.
not-
I mean, the
Pay
dollar.
more.
Well, and
yeah.
the reason why I ask is because in most procurement processes, there are preferences given to certain businesses regardless of if it costs more. So I didn't know if that was the intention in this.
That was not my intention.
Right, so I think the two things going on. One, I think the way it's written in this discussion helps explain what the intent is. We have been talking about internally a buy local, like what does that mean, right? And that gets into, are we going to set a threshold that if it's local or that any type, is there going to be any preference type of awarding? And if we were to do that, we would have that conversation with the commission. We're not just going to go do that. So I think this is just trying to, one, encourage us to make sure we're contacting, engaging, including as much local as we can in the processes that we do. The second component of that is that if we did want to get into any type of a preference determination on certain types of purchases or projects or under a certain threshold, we would bring that back for a discussion. That we're not going to take this and just go make something up.
I mean, my concern is, and I'll show my bias right here, I don't want to find out that the city is purchasing a whole bunch of stuff from Amazon. And this is way before this other situation that's going on in Washington, D.C. I will just say for the record, I have never purchased anything from Amazon because I don't feel that they promote small businesses, and I would rather buy something, if I can do it, I will buy something from somebody here. Or, going out to West Lynn or Milwaukee. I mean, it's staying, I'd like my money to stay in my community because every dollar that I spend gets divided up further. It's like when people tell me that they are so glad that the mill is gone. Well, what I said to them is I said, number one, that was part of our tax base. Number two, those people buy homes, they buy groceries in the store, they buy this, they buy that. They're keeping their money in Oregon City. So by you saying you're glad it's closed, well, look at all the stuff we lost by having that. Not having those people who are contributing to our community. So it's a personal preference for me, but we're doing big, I don't see big Amazon trucks driving up to our city facilities, so I don't think that helps our economy and doesn't help our community.
I never use the word never,
I know.
that we never will do it.
No, but
Out of
it's not our
convenience, I imagine we probably have.
It's not our preference.
We have a lot of purchases that happen every month. But
Yes,
I
I
also
know
know
that.
we make a significant amount of purchases locally here in the community.
Yes, and I know we do because the business owners tell me, which I appreciate the fact that they do tell me this because I asked. So, all right.
Well, I will
Anything
note
else?
that on my Amazon Basics notepad that I have right in front of me.
Is this an Amazon Basics? Yeah. Yeah, did we buy these from Amazon?
Yeah, it's Amazon
Probably.
Basics.
Okay.
I don't
but-
get them from Amazon.
Yes, so thank you, Commissioner Mitchell,
I didn't buy these.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell, for clarifying that. Because I don't have a problem making sure that we're communicating more with our local businesses who have the
Exactly.
opportunity. But as an example, as you all know, from many reports, CIC has had a lot of discussions about budget allocation and postcards. And when our community engagement specialist found a better
Yes,
rate
better deal.
at a business in Salem rather than the business we were using in Oregon City. It was something that they were excited to use because it
Yes.
made their dollars go farther.
Yes, I
And that's
support
something
that.
that we owe to our residents to
I
look
agree.
for those opportunities.
But we have to make.
And as long as the local supplier had the opportunity,
Yes.
then that's all,
Exactly. If they have
that's
the
all I'm,
opportunity
that's
to
all
be
I'm looking
competitive,
for.
that's all I care about. As
Yep.
long as they get the
Perfect.
opportunity, and we haven't always been, supportive of that. But because we have businesses in town that, our Neighbors Night Out, we have a local business that supplies a lot of the hot dogs and the buns, staying in the community. So, anything else? So do we want to move this forward?
Yeah, if you're comfortable,
I'm
or if you'd
comfortable.
like me to take it back, accept red lines, give you a more clean version.
I need it by Friday.
Oh, your meeting, you run it.
Huh?
If you want to make a motion to approve it, or if you're just comfortable after this discussion that we consider these ready to go, because that would help us too. I mean, we're going to incorporate these into the budget into the budget discussion, so.
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this with the red lines.
I'll second.
Well, and the edit about the
Right.
city special.
And,
Right.
yes,
And
and the
edits
idiot,
tonight.
Yeah,
or
he
the,
said
yeah,
as amended and with the red lines.
the-
Amended.
yeah.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Marl,
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So I want police protection if Amazon comes after me.
Jeff Bezos is going to come knocking at your door.
That's what I'm worried about now. And I don't have a dog. All right. Any business from the commission?
I got one thing.
Good.
Mr. Conkle, do you have the item I asked you to bring?
Here it comes.
What is this?
Oh, you're going to love it.
Oh, no, I do not. You hurt me to the quick.
I know.
We are not flying that.
No, we're not, and
Oh,
that's
my
the point.
God.
So where did we find this?
It's in the basement. I've seen it.
So that's the point, it's in the basement, right?
Yes.
This is an objectively bad flag. It violates virtually every rule of what
Please
makes
put it down.
a good flag. Well, I want the people of Oregon City to see, like, this is the flag.
It's so
of our city,
offensive,
right?
it's not funny.
So what I'm asking is, I know we've had some discussion about
The city
city
seal.
seal. I would like, if we're amenable to it, to incorporate a discussion on the city flag. There's some great flags out there. Portland has a great flag. The New Salem flag is great. Chicago has one of my favorite city flags. We should have a great flag that we are proud to fly and not hide in the basement.
I agree.
Because we are embarrassed to even put it out there.
As we
That's why-
should be.
That's why it got off of our vehicles in due time, because it was just, it's so wrong in so many ways.
It is. So again, I'd really like that to add that to a future agenda item to talk about.
Yes.
How can we get a not horrible flag?
Yes, well, I will again ask the city recorder to bring our original seal, which is amazing, and we already have it for you guys to look at, because it is very cool. Yes, we had a student who approached me 3 years ago and said, I came up with some designs for a flag, and wanted to know why we weren't flying our city flag, and I told him because it was very inappropriate
So
and
the
racist and
seal-
violent.
Embarrassing.
The seal discussion is on our future work
Yes,
session.
is.
Right, so just make it seal and flag.
yeah, our seal is, the seal we have now is that. And it's, anyway, it's not good.
But yeah,
All right.
it's not nearly as visible as that.
No, but if you know what it is, it's,
Yeah,
you know.
I know.
it's- I hand people a proclamation and I just thought, oh my God, don't look at that under a microscope and under a magnifying glass. Okay, anything else from the commission? Okay, so I have one item, and that is the appointment of Neil, how do you pronounce Neil's last name? Nick?
Dirkman. Nick, it's Nick.
Nick
Yeah.
Drickman
Yeah.
to the
Dirkman.
Citizen Involvement Committee to replace the person that moved, which is Steve Van Haverbeek. He moved out of Oregon City, He's now a resident of West Lynn, and so his CIC position is vacant. I've talked to Nick. He is willing to serve, and so I'm going to make that appointment.
I do have one question for the city manager. How are we doing on the second round of DMMO board applications and a timeframe?
Let me check with Mr. Graham and see where we're at. And
I was told today that we have three
I
potential.
knew we had at least three, but I thought
potential
we were maybe
applicants
gonna
to
get a
interview, and
couple
he is in the
more.
process of setting that up.
I'm sorry, when you're both
Yes,
talking, I
three
can't hear.
applicants, three potential applicants for the criteria that we asked about.
Okay.
And so he is in the process of setting up some interviews.
Okay.
So we will be getting that toot sweet. And that was this afternoon about 4:30.
So I was just seeing if we had scheduled them yet.
They're not yet, but he's getting there, because I asked the same thing. All right, being that there is no further business, we are officially adjourned until